Today I'm wearing sunglasses to protect my identity because I have a feeling that some of these opinions are going to be pretty controversial. So, back in 2022, I decided to try to watch as many movies as I possibly could, within reason. I'm sure I could have fit more in if I had committed to that being the only thing I was doing, but I was trying to just fit it in with my normal schedule of things. And I ended up watching about 120. Now, about 20 of those or so were not quite horror movies. Some of them straight up were not horror movies. So I've taken those out. When I decided to do this little project, I decided at the same time to do let's call it a micro review for each of the movies. And partially this was to try to help me remember the movies if I ever wanted to look back on them. But part of it was just an exercise. See, I'm a writer by trade, by nature, been writing stories for literally as long as I can remember. But the truth is that I am very wordy. I'm a very, very verbose writer. And I know that part of getting to be a better writer is being more concise. So, not only was being more concise something that I personally needed to work on, but also as I watched so many movies, I came to realize that many movies, especially horror movies, would be so much better if they were just like half an hour shorter. A lot of horror movies would be best, I believe, around the 1 hour mark. There are very, very few movies, and especially horror movies, that I believe kind of earn that, like 2+ hours movie length. And if you'd like to hear me talk about one such movie that definitely earns its runtime, that would be Sinners. It was something I did pretty early on in the channel, but I'm happy with it. And to be clear, this project wasn't for anything. I am not in film school. I don't plan on becoming a film critic. I don't plan on becoming even an amateur film critic. I mean, unless you count these YouTube videos, which I would hardly call critiques or reviews, but more just elaborate gushing about things that I like. I know that if I wanted to, I could be more objective and I can put aside my personal tastes to appreciate when something is good, even if it's not something that I personally like. And that actually leads pretty well into my next point that I need to make before we start looking at these reviews that I wrote. See, the reason that I said at the beginning of the video that some of these opinions might be a little controversial is because I have rated and reviewed these movies based on my own personal enjoyment. I, of course, do recognize some objective good things in the reviews, but when it comes to the rating system, it's out of 5. And yeah, so because they're rated on my own personal enjoyment of the movies, some of these ratings have made some people pretty mad. So, warning you going in. So I did contemplate a few different ways to structure this video, but ultimately I decided to just group the reviews together by their rating out of 5. And of course, we're going to start with the lowest because you always start with bad news first, right? And while these will be in order of star rating, the movies themselves are not in any particular order. Alrighty, here's the stack of micro reviews. That's right, they're actually on paper. This way, it absolutely forced me to stay very, very restrained on how much I could write, even though I did write very tiny. Let's get started. So, this first movie is actually the only one out of 100 that got 0 stars. So, 0 out of 5. And that would be The Bye Bye Man. This was a really bad movie. Let's see what I wrote. Potentially the worst horror movie. Terrible acting, inconsistent and weak story, bad sound engineering, which is the death of any horror movie, CGI that looked like it was from the 90s that was totally unnecessary too. I do remember this, yes. The Bye Bye Man himself might be a rejected member of Slipknot, so very lame. Yeah, this movie was one of those ones where you're like, oh, I'm definitely never getting that amount of time of my life back. I really wish I had. Like, if I'm recalling correctly, the Bye Bye Man had like a weird, like, hellhound pet thing, which was like the bad CGI, and it was so unnecessary. Like, why? Anyways, moving right along. Number two is the Amityville Terror. Oh, I guess I should probably say the years these are from, right? Because some of these will be remakes and stuff. So this one is Amityville Terror 2017. It has half of a star, or I guess a heart on these. I'm saying stars because that's kind of what everyone uses for movies, so please forgive me. Yeah, so it's point 0.5 out of 5. This movie is so bad, it gives a bad name to bad movies. Just every terrible trope, but without a hint of irony. The main character is unbearable. The others are weirdly cast. The parents look the same age as the daughter. And there's incest. Well, I, uh, I, you know what? I think I blocked a lot of that movie out of my brain because, yeah, I don't remember too much about that. Let's just move right along. Next, we have Escape Room 2017. There was another movie called Escape Room that was made, I believe, a year later or a year earlier. Either way, that is a good escape room. This is the bad escape room. It seems like the escape room itself was completely unnecessary. The first horror thing happened an hour in. There's no real story except vapid, sexually motivated betrayal. Whole ending sequence was so confusing and dumb and pointless, it borders on offensive. Yeah, I remember having really high hopes for this. I actually watched it before I watched the other escape room movie, which thank God, because that one is so much better. I really didn't know why they even set this movie in an escape room. It, again, completely unnecessary. There was like one room that filled with like poison gas, and like the people didn't survive it because like it wasn't really an escape room, it was just a death trap. Anywho, here we have one of those remakes I mentioned, The Wicker Man 2006. 1 star. My review from 2022 is as follows. Oh God, this movie. It is not a good approximation of the original, and the changes made detract from what made it so disturbing. The elimination of the music considerably weakens the impact. Rather than a sense of disorientation, the plot is just confusing. What are the flashbacks for? So, I actually watched the two Wicker Man movies back to back, and I am going to get to the original. It's in a much, much higher rating category. However, I will say that it was one of those things where if you're going to watch the 2006 Wicker Man, do not do it immediately after watching the original because it is so disappointing and it's like more disappointing in like comparison to the original. So, yeah, also there are a bunch of flashbacks in the movie to like I think Nicolas Cage's like daughter child. There was a child in like the back of a car being either kidnapped or they were driving away from him. Like, seriously, this is how bad some of these movies were, is I just completely block a lot of them. But I do remember that those flashbacks led absolutely nowhere. Like, they had zero impact on the plot. Moving on. Staying in the 1 star category, we have The Grudge 2020. They tried to use the curse with a new premise, which is fine. However, it kind of missed the mark on capturing the creepy vibe of the original. Mediocre acting and badly paced. Entirely forgettable from start to finish, probably not worth watching. Not much more to say than that. Here we have another 2020 release, 30 Miles from Nowhere. I honestly don't remember anything about this movie, so let's see what I wrote. The concept of this movie was good, but unfortunately the execution was not. With mediocre acting, terrible pacing, and so many unanswered questions, this was not a particularly enjoyable experience, and not even scary. Ending felt very abrupt. Well, that didn't really help me remember anything about the plot, but it did make me aware that I should not rewatch it. Sticking firmly in the one star category, Slender Man, 2018. I really wanted this movie to be good because there's so few good video game movies, and you should watch my Prince of Persia Assassin's Creed movie video if you want to hear more on my opinion about video game movies. Um, but it was not good. So Slender Man, let's see what I wrote here. Awful cinematography. Should have committed to the video game style if they were going to use it at all. Half-hearted attempt to explain Slender Man with paranormal science was just straight up abandoned. Dream sequence is spooky! Exclamation mark. So early in the movie, they have a sequence that is like first person, and it does sort of feel like the video game. I mean, it was like clearly going for that more video game style. And like I said, I feel like if they had stuck with that, it at least would have been more like immersive if it had played with the video game somehow as like a framing device or whatever. But yeah, also they do attempt to explain like why Slender Man happened, but then like halfway through the movie, like it just never comes back and it's never really resolved. And Slender Man is one of those movies that feels like two different people made the front and back half of it. It wasn't a good three-act structure. It was like half a movie and then half of a different movie, but they were both making Slender Man. Oh boy, next we have Silent Hill Revelation from 2012. And this movie was real bad, still one star, but I do remember quite a lot of it because, okay, just listen to what I wrote here. Somehow even worse than its predecessor, yet bafflingly has so many established stars in the cast. Kit Harington played a living exposition dump. The villain was laughably ineffective, but at least the fight with Pyramid Head was kind of cool. Yeah, so I absolutely need to know if anybody has any connections to the film industry or Silent Hill Revelation or anybody who was involved with it. I need to know who had the blackmail to get so many famous people in this movie. Seriously, it is a Fire video game movie sequel, and l- look, look at the cast. Just look. What? I swear to God, either somebody had some real good blackmail or a lot of people owed somebody some favors, because why? Just how and why? Why and how? Next, we have The Dare 2019. Obviously, trying to do a Saw thing, but the gore all felt really forced and the characters were terrible. Bizarre B plot, which turns out to be a mislead flashback, didn't really make sense, but the inversion of the torture trope is decent, not scary. So this was I watched it when I was just going through my let's click on every horror movie on Netflix and just power through it and see what's up phase. And yeah, that movie was really, it was trying to be Saw. It was like, oh, there's people chained up in a room together and they all have to like admit what they did or they're going to be killed and then like they get tortured. But like all the torture is like not that scary. It's not like scary at all. I mean, like I was disturbed by like there's a part where like a woman is like force fed beetles or something. The beetles are full of razor blades. Anyways, that part was like gross, but it's more the idea of being force fed anything with like a big like tube going down the throat and then like stuff being put in it. Like that really skeeves me out like a lot. Like so that was the only part, but like it wasn't scary. Also, the the flashback mislead plot. It again, it was like it was trying to do Saw, but like not Saw. So like in Saw, you have all the flashbacks that like lead up to the events of the movie. Whereas in this, it's like you think it's like simultaneously happening, but then it turns out that it was a flashback of like the character. I can't remember. This is not a good movie. Don't watch it. Let's just move on. Another one star from 2019. Dybbuk, is it Dybbuk Box? The story of Chris Chambers. I feel bad. I think that this is like a Hindi word or maybe an Arabic word. Um, it's Dybuk. I think in the movie they say it like Dybbuk Box. I'm very sorry if that's incorrect. You can let me know in the comments how to say it. Um, so let's see what the review says. Short run times in horror aren't necessarily bad. Obviously, I talked about that in the beginning. But sadly, this movie needed more, or at least better use of the time. Felt like the whole thing was building up to something that never happened. Probably could have been scary and just constantly fell flat. So, yeah, I remember this one pretty well. And again, like it did have the pieces to be scary. It it was well, I don't want to say it was trying to be paranormal activity. It is a found footage one, and I think maybe it would have been better if it had been Green Life, the way that like Unfriended or Host are, because the whole thing is like he orders the Dybbuk box off the dark web, and then like it's cursed, but again, like you spend the whole movie waiting for something to happen and then like nothing happens. Like the story, well, like what is the story of Chris Chambers? It's like he ordered a box off the dark web and it was spooky to him, but like the story is not interesting. Moving on. 2016's The Crooked Man. I knew of The Crooked Man because of the Conjuring movies. Is it the second one that the yeah, the second one, The Crooked Man is like one of the he's like in the poem, I believe. And anyways, so I was excited for this, and as you can see, it has 1 star, so I was let down. Initially, a good premise with a pretty scary monster, but it went off the rails real fast. All the characters, other than Olive, are wildly inconsistent, especially Noah, whose twist only raised more questions. At least the chosen effects used for the monster were cool. I don't really remember anything else, so next one. Here we have Death Valley 2021. Way too much time spent gunfighting, far too little on the monsters. Seems more like a concept than a story. Nothing they set up was resolved or even really addressed. It is not surprising that all the actors in this have more or less empty IMDb pages. The monsters are cool. So it seemed like the people who made this movie really probably wanted to make a Fallout-esque video game, and instead they were like, let's make it a film. The problem is that in a video game, the story is all spread out. really, really thin over the course. I mean, like, depending on the video game, but a game like Fallout, because it's open world, the story is spread thin, but the bulk of what the player is consuming is like their own exploration and their own like world building basically within the world that exists. And I realize that there is some debate on what to actually call a game like Fallout. I think it is a sandbox game, but I've heard a lot of people say that it's actually not because technically something something. Anyways, the point is that Death Valley was like a cool, like military looking bunker with some really cool looking monsters that I thought were pretty spooky. But yeah, it was like they just this movie felt sort of like they made the first like third of a movie and then like that was the whole movie. This one might split a crowd. Here we have The Omen 2006. Okay, so the remake with Alicia Cuthbert, I think. Um, I have rated it 1 star, and here's why. Probably scarier if you are a parent. Otherwise, the horror was very meh. Bored of the tortured wife slash skeptic husband dynamic. Mia Farrow was brilliantly hateful and embodied evil. Wish there was more context, though. I don't think I watched the original. I don't think that there is a second Conan review. And when I say I'm real sick of that tortured wife, skeptic husband stereotype trope type thing in horror movies, it really is like a personal sensitivity thing because when you are a mentally ill person and you have to constantly deal with people not believing you or people basically like asking you to prove things that are completely intangible and extremely difficult to even explain, let alone prove, um, it just kind of hits a nerve that I don't particularly enjoy. Also, I get that, like, the kid is supposed to be Satan or whatever, but you just like really like I don't know. I did not have a good time watching this movie the whole time. I was just mad. I was just mad the whole I think the husband is played by Liev Schreiber. Liev 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 Schreiber Schreiber Liev Schreiber. I'm sorry. Anyways, I was just mad at him the whole time, and I was like, "Mhm." Anyways, so I understand that The Omen is one of those like super duper classic movies, but I also recall that like part of the reason that this movie was even remade at all was because they had the opportunity to release it on 666, June 6th, 2006. You only get a few of those every millennium, so here we have The Remains 2016. Okay premise, but not executed very well. The kids were unconvincing as being possessed, and there was a lack of follow through in every moment that was meant to be scary. Seems like all the side characters had no purpose or significance. I kind of remember this movie. I definitely remember that the kids were like not good at like seeming possessed, and like I know you have to kind of forgive child actors because like setting aside the entire horror of like the child acting in Hollywood machine, just like kids are kids and like you can't expect like adult quality acting out of them. You know, not every kid is a Haley Joel Osment or a Dakota Fanning or what have you. I'm like, I know that there have been a lot of like really good child actors who kind of like broke the mold, but in a lot of cases, they're not great. Oh yeah, we're still on the 1 stars now with 2020's Triggered. The best way to describe this film is someone's dad saw a battle royale, then wrote a knockoff that exclusively uses a mom blog's glossary for teen slang for the dialogue. Also, every actor had an accent they very poorly covered with an American one. And that made even less sense to me because there was no reason for all of these characters to be American. Like, why weren't they all just using their own accents? And if they weren't trying to cover other accents, like some of them definitely were trying to cover like an English accent, like for sure. But if some of them weren't, because it did sound like all of them were, um, I definitely have questions. Moving up to 1.5 stars, we have The Descent Part 2, 2009. Trust me, the first one is much, much higher rated. This movie did not need to be made. It's obviously trying to capture the lightning of the first and basically hits all the same beats. Male cop is the worst and wastes screen time that could be used for spelunkers. Sarah's character made no sense. The end sucks. Yeah, it really was just like a beat for beat of the first movie that like with different people and like slightly, I guess, slightly more likable people. I don't, it was really just the same movie twice. I don't know if this will be controversial. I suspect it might be 1.5 for 2004's Primer. A long walk for a short drink, plot-wise. Such an abrupt ending, it feels like a glitch in the file. The way it's shot is really cool, and the color palette is pleasing to the eye. Unfortunately, the acting is bland, lacks any clarity. I know that sometimes when you have a psychological movie, it's not supposed to be super clear, but in order to have an effect, it has to have a sense of like some direction. Otherwise, it can't be scary because everyone's just going to be confused. Next, we have 2018's The Titan. Cool idea, but unfortunate execution. Poor pacing, lack of character context and depth, very strange choices made for filming certain scenes. Transforming was a long road for a mediocre payoff. Ending was real stupid. I do feel like this was one of the earlier on ones I watched, and yeah, it was like a body horror kind of like, oh, can like body enhancements go too far and make us monster? I like, yeah, it wasn't good. Next is 2020's The Rental, 1.5 stars. All lead up and pretty much no payoff. The pace is weird, and all the situations seemed contrived, and although the acting is okay for each individual character, no one had any believable chemistry. They set up so many potentially interesting plot threads and dropped all of them. Here we have the first Silent Hill movie from 2006, 1.5 stars. Not really a scary movie, unless CGI gore really causes fear in the watcher. The grotesque monsters get old pretty fast. The cult was not interesting, but at least there was an effort to pay homage to the game. Sybil is the only good character, and Chris is totally pointless. I feel like I may have lied a little bit on this one because the scene where is Sybil the lady cop? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Again, this was 2022. But anyways, um, towards the end, spoilers, by the way, if you care about Silent Hill 2006, um, there's a scene near the end where the lady cop character is tied to like a big ladder, basically, and held over a fire and burned alive. But like, she's not burned in the flames. She's like burned and like cooked by the heat of the fire. And it was traumatic. Honestly, it made me feel sick for days. Even remembering it made me feel, and like the gore, again, like it's not that bad. It's 2006 gore, but that situation definitely got to me. I'm not sure why I didn't mention it. I probably was trying to front like I'm tougher than I actually am, but I'm a pretty big baby, actually. Right along to Can't Take It Back 2017. Pretty much a worse knockoff of Unfriended, and even when it tries to explain things, it still makes no sense. Anakoto. Anakoto. Oh, I'm sorry, my writing is so tiny. Anakoto was the only saving grace. Noah Centino, I'm so sorry, was clearly trying hard, but it didn't work. Logan Paul should die gruesomely. Instead, his character is forgotten. Yeah, there was Logan Paul in a horror movie, and they didn't gruesomely kill his character. Like, his character is just like in a scene, and then like he's in scenes in the beginning, and then just never comes back. He's just completely forgotten, like they didn't resolve. If you have the opportunity for Logan Paul to die gruesomely in a movie, I don't wish any harm on the real Logan Paul. I mean, I like not in any more sense than I wish that he like steps on many Legos with his bare feet, but otherwise, you should be taking the opportunity to at least like do a carry to Logan Paul in a horror movie. Moving right into the two-star category, exciting. We have 2015's Into the Grizzly Maze. Not gonna lie, I exclusively clicked on this movie because I saw James Marsden, who I love, and who is very cute. So I was like, sure, it's probably okay. Um, I don't think 2 stars is okay. It was pretty bad. Questionable editing and CGI. Horror moments felt forced. Bear was clearly on a green screen. Deaf character played by non-deaf actress. Billy Bob Thornton gave a great performance, though. Next, we have The Room, but don't get excited. It is not the Tommy Wiseau cult classic, whatever you want to call it. It is from 2019. It is a horror movie. I gave it 2 stars. Why is the child English, like from the UK, when both the parents are clearly from France? Honestly, a great idea with consistent rules regarding magic, but be prepared to hate the mom character. Could have used more suspense and scares. Alternatively, it could be cut down by 30 minutes, which is, again, something I said at the beginning. A lot of horror movies would benefit from that. Ruh-roh. I kind of feel like I may have rated this one a little bit harshly. 2016's The Neon Demon. Surrealism is always a bit unsatisfying because the ending is vague. At least the twist was unexpected and fun. Elle Fanning is talented with unearthly doll-like beauty, perfect casting. Keanu Reeves also gave a great creepy performance. Honestly, when I saw Keanu Reeves in this movie, I like had to Google it because I was like, that cannot possibly be Keanu Reeves playing that character, right? Like, so creepy. And like, we know that Keanu is one of the very few men who is basically on the like permanent, great, excellent, beautiful, perfect man list. Um, but boy, he was a creep in this movie. I don't remember why I rated it so low. I didn't write anything overly negative about it. Um, I'm sorry, guys, I can't explain that one. 2018's Headcount is next. Way too much tell and not enough show. Legitimately a good premise, but a bad story. The end is so abrupt and leaves so many questions. It's as if an entire page was cut from the script. Some good scares, but the teenage characters suck. Yeah, this is now the second movie where I've said that. And listen, there is a difference between making your movie shorter and just topping it off in an unnatural place. Like, you do need to still resolve the story. So, any horror writers listening right now, please don't just like hack off the last 3 pages of the script or something. Here's another that may divide the room. 1980s Cannibal Holocaust, one of the original found footage movies said to have at least popularized the genre of found footage. Um, it's uh, it's unexpected. I will say that much. Let me just redo the review here. Worth watching for the sake of horror history and the clear impact it had, but otherwise, this is a mediocre movie that can be skipped. The entire framing device should be removed and replaced with an opening crawl or title card. So, if you don't know, the way that the movie Cannibal Holocaust is set up is that, like, there were these journalist, researcher, film crew people who went out into the jungle and never came back. And so the movie starts with these people discussing, rescue operation, or at least to go look for them to find out what happened. And I believe there's like a bunch of academics and I'm sorry again, 2022, it was one of the earlier ones. So, like, I guess it didn't leave as much of an impact on me as I was hoping. And I'm not somebody who is easily affected by the age of a movie. I can put myself right into the time period. That isn't the problem. The problem is that the framing device of Cannibal Holocaust makes it drag a lot. And I just don't think it's necessary if you wanted to have that whole like do it like the Blair Witch. I mean, the Blair Witch Project is like the child of Cannibal Holocaust. So obviously they were able to do things better by looking at the mistakes of their predecessor. But I do think that just having like a title card explaining that like these journalists went missing and then like this other crew found those like big things of film, the canisters of like the film reels, because back in the 1980s they were still using like gigantic, lots of, anyways. Yeah, overall, again, worth watching if you are interested in the history of horror and the way that it has evolved, because there are some movies that are so seminal that they actually reshape the genre, and Cannibal Holocaust was definitely one of those movies. It's also particularly infamous for having the director get called to court and prove basically that he didn't murder a bunch of people to make this movie, because at the time found footage was not really like a well-known thing. Also, the director was Italian, so in Italy that wasn't the type of movie that they were making very commonly there, especially. So like, I believe there were earlier American found footage movies. If I'm not mistaken, let me know in the comments. If you're looking for scares, honestly, the only scare to me is that they did kill some real animals in the earlier scenes when they're first arriving in the jungle. There's like a turtle and like a goat or something. I can't remember exactly. I skipped over a lot of the opening because I can't watch animals be hurt. Moving along, we have 2021 Antlers. Likely would have been stronger if there was more than just one half-assed native character in a movie based on a native myth. The in-universe mechanics of the monster are confusing, but it looked scary and was a great practical effect. So, obviously, I'm sure that many of you who are fans of horror already know this, but if you don't, the issue with a lot of folk horror is that it lifts from native and indigenous mythology, but then doesn't include native characters. Often, if it does, they're not even actually really. Often it's white people getting cast, and I'm sure there are people who have done entire deep dives on this topic, and maybe I should be one of them, because the erasure of people of color in Hollywood's history is something that's really fascinating in terms of like how, not fascinating good, fascinating bad, fascinating, and like again, in terms of how an industry can become so insular when they are literally trying to portray people from other cultures, but they won't allow the people from other cultures to be in the movies. I don't. Anyways, let's move on. This is a review video, so let's just keep going. Oh, two and a half stars now. We have 2019's Z. The very definition of disappointment. The plot was good, everything was legitimately scary, build-up was so strong, only for it to lamely peter out at the end. Also, the psychologist needed more screen time in the middle third of the film or to be removed completely. Next up, we have 2019's The Curse of La Llorona. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I can speak French, but my Spanish is not great. Super far removed from the rest of the universe and probably the weakest link. Oh, if you didn't know, this movie is technically part of the Conjuring universe, so like Annabelle and the Nun, those are all like a shared universe, and the Curse of La Llorona is in it. The story and legend are interesting, but the execution was weak, too slow to start, and the ex-priest character should have been introduced way earlier. He was the best part. Always include more sexy priests. That's all I have to say. Now, 2022's Grimcutty. Kind of a stupid premise, but the story was still pretty strong thanks to the main actors. It's great to see a non white family where they're portrayed normally instead of tropes and stereotypes. Admittedly, the monster looks dumb, but the jump scares are fine. So, yeah, if you're looking for a movie to be scared by, this movie is going to let you down unless all you care about is jump scares. It's probably fine for like young teenagers or maybe even kids, depending on what they're scared by. But yeah, just on that note of the non-white family, it's like oftentimes in media, if there is a non-white family, there's a reason, like in the script, for why, and there's some kind of often playing into stereotypes or tropes. Next is Mandrake 2022. Really cool premise, intriguing folk horror setup, fantastic acting, and some legit scary scenes. Unfortunately, what little story exists has no direction. It feels like there should have been a third act, but they ran out of money and just stopped there instead of writing an end. What did I just talk about? The Other Side of the Door, 2016.
Editor Lex jumping in here to say that I don't know what happened, but the audio for this particular review went all wonky, like part of it was just straight up missing. So I'm going to read it again, and you'll just have to not have my definitely perfect disguise to look at while I do so. Slow to start, but does pick up pace when horror elements come into play. The mother character is kind of a tired concept, but the daughter was good. Setting was very cool, and the monster well done and creepy. Plot, meh. There you have it.
I actually like don't remember a lot about this one. I think like again it was a fine like background noise movie. Still in 2.5 stars out of 5. Haunting of the Mary Celeste. Actually, a pretty good premise. The intersection of science and supernatural was intriguing. Unfortunately, too much time spent on the wrong things led to an unsatisfying ending, which seemed rushed, like they just ran out of money or ideas or something. Funny how that keeps happening, huh? I do like horror set on a boat. Oceans are very scary to me. Shout out to Wendigoon, who pointed out to me that you're often scared of the thing that you didn't grow up with or that you're not familiar with. So, like, if you grew up near an ocean, then like maybe the ocean isn't scary for you because you spent a lot of time there. And like if you're like a surfer or something, then like the ocean is your friend. It's where you go to play and have fun. But for Wendigoon, it was like he grew up in the mountains and forests. So for him, like the forest is his friend and he loves, being surrounded by the trees and everything. But for a lot of people, they're completely freaked out by the forest. and a lot of city people, like some fairies who shall not be named, are completely freaked out by both. Next up is Aftershock 2012. This is definitely an Eli Roth movie, and if you don't know what I mean by that, excessive violence, excessive gore, very gratuitous suffering. Although it's more stressful than scary. Premise was good, but a lot of the execution felt cliche. Characters were also good, and the actors portrayed them convincingly, particularly Eli Roth and Nicolas Martinez. This movie is very disturbing, and I say that because, as I mentioned, more stressful than scary, it is a disaster movie. It's like there's an earthquake. It's called Aftershock. There's an earthquake, and a lot of terrible things happen in the aftershock of the earthquake. And the characters I did like. I guess a lot of them work with Eli Roth like frequently. I know many directors are like that, so it's not like it's something special. I just thought it was interesting because I am going to talk about another Eli Roth movie in another section of higher ratings, and a lot of the same actors were in that movie. Oh, and one last thing about Aftershock is if you are sensitive to sexual violence being pretty vividly portrayed, I would steer clear of this one. Hey, look, we're up to 3 stars now, and we have 1997's Cube. Fantastic story idea. The effects are pretty good for the time, definitely has a Hellraiser vibe. Sadly, the acting is subpar and there are way too many crossfades. Plot also should have focused more on the third act, not first. Honestly, I say that, take it with a pinch of salt because even though I do think that the third act needed way more time, I really enjoyed the first act. Um, I just it it maybe should have been multiple movies. I think maybe it could have been stretched into a trilogy, but it probably should have been at least two. I just think that the director wanted to do too much, or like they would have needed to remove like two of the characters or something like that. Moving along, we have Bone Tomahawk 2015. The premise was interesting. Horror movies in this setting seem rare. This setting being like Wild West, cowboy, like sort of early settler vibes. Not early settlers to America, to the West rather. Um, that whole, like I said, like the Wild West idea. Probably could have done without the whole savage native thing and just created monsters with a similar design. Patrick Wilson nailed it, and Kurt Russell was good. Horse death is sad. I'm always way more sensitive to animal deaths than I am to people deaths. I don't know if it's just because animals are beautiful and innocent and a lot of people are terrible, or if it's just because we're more desensitized to human death. I don't know, but I always get really, really sad about animal death. Um, yeah, also, I feel like a lot of movies could go this direction that, like, why did it need to be a creepy native tribe that, like, has really horrific practices? Like, literally, the villains of this movie are a cannibalistic native tribe who, like, cover their bodies head to toe in ash and they like torture people and like keep them in cages to eat them slowly. And there's like a shot at the end where you see some really horrific, like how they treat their women. And basically, it's like they're like amputated and like their eyes and mouths are sewn shut. And so it's like, and they're all portrayed as pregnant. So, like, that's the kind of portrayal of natives that we have in this movie. And it's like, could that not just have been monsters? Like, how much would you have lost? Like literally nothing. It would have been just the exact same like spookiness if you could have made it like aliens or just like cave monsters because like the native people are like living in a cave. Like that's where like the cages of people are and stuff. So like why did you like I get that like cowboys and Indians was like a thing. But this movie was made in 2015 and I love me some Patrick Wilson. Okay, that is my Scream King, but yes, could have been better. I do not remember anything based on the name 2019 Mary. Most of the fear in this movie comes from jump scares, but almost all of them are unexpected, so they're very effective. It is not Gary Oldman's best performance by a long shot. The rest of the cast is good, though. Ends with a feeling of something missing. Well, I still don't remember anything else about that one, so let's move on. 2016's The Belko Experiment. This is pretty great like humans are the real monsters movie where like it just is like humans versus humans, like how depraved are you willing to get to survive kind of thing. A decent murder fest and a pretty cool premise, but something is missing in terms of heart. Good action, gore, and pacing. However, all the characters are flat and stereotypes, even the hero. Just needs a bit more story or context or dimension. Not too much more I can say about that other than I love John C. McGinley and he plays like sort of like the main antagonist character. And anything he's in, I'm down for. Still in 3 stars, of course. The House's October Belt 2014. Scary in a real life way, gives the impression that it could really happen. Unfortunately, the found footage style makes it somewhat hard to watch. The cameras are always refocusing, which is frustrating when trying to see detail. Do not watch if scared of being buried alive, which I am, and whew, the ending of this movie, very disturbing. Um, yeah, I won't spoil that one, but yeah, if that's a fear of yours, maybe skip it. Now, we are moving up to 3.5 stars, but this first one I'm about to read, I have a feeling some people might be mad. The Cabin in the Woods, 2012. There is no denying this is a great movie, maybe the best self aware horror ever made. It's hard to articulate, but something about the pacing felt off, like it would go too slow and then too fast. Pretty good unexpected end. However, not sure what the point of Suit Lady is. That's Sigourney Weaver at the end. I'm not trying to make anyone mad by rating it 3.5 stars. Like I said, it's an amazing movie, and in terms of like horror history, it like definitely has earned its place. It's really a lot of fun. And like again, like if you like self-aware, sort of like black comedy, um, like always, I will say it's worth watching. Even though I rated it 3.5 stars, it's absolutely worth watching. Like you should watch it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It really like it wasn't paced right or something. Like I can't articulate it. It's just something was off. Poltergeist, 2015. The dark and tense moments when the spirits are invisible are much scarier than any of the CGI spirits. Solid cast, especially the kids. Unsure if the TV guy was necessary, but he was fun to watch. Overall, a good and spooky one. I don't think I've seen the original. I don't think it might be in here. It might not. I honestly can't remember. I'm pretty sure this is just some very like middling, like generic horror. And I will always 100% say that anything you can imply is way scarier than anything you can show. And a lot of movies and horror like shows and stuff have really lost the fear from showing a monster or showing like too much of a monster, because obviously like getting glimpses is fun, but like Cloverfield is a great example of like they hide the monster for a long time, and so like you just get the sense of like this monstrosity for like, and it's like a building escalation thing, and like that's way scarier, and stuff that's invisible is of course scarier, just in my opinion. 2020's The Retreat is next. A great movie that could have been so incredible if it was 30 minutes shorter and if they didn't botch the end with two unnecessary epilogues. Also guilty of showing the monster too soon and too much, but overall a great mind bender. How weird is that? That I was just talking about this issue in the last one, and I didn't know that these were in this order, honestly. It's an issue. I'm hoping this one doesn't make too many people mad either. It's 1987's Predator. So the original, it's 3.5 stars. Arnold is so oddly charming, it's impossible to not love him. Obviously, very iconic, and the action is fun enough to watch that the cringe parts are forgivable. However, the inclusion of a pointless female character is annoying. Great explodey ending, though. Maybe I should have rated that one higher, especially now that I've seen Predator Badlands. I just went to see it the other day, and oh my God, if you'd like me to make a video about that movie, please let me know because I had so many questions. Number one of which being, who was that movie even for? Next up, 2012's Would You Rather. Not as cheesy as expected, actually quite a good, tight movie. Very much a downer, with basically no catharsis, but it's not gory or torture porn. All the actors did great work, and there's only one unsatisfying death. Just not super sure if the doctor was necessary. Yeah, I'd say this is a good movie, but it is a downer, like with a downer ending, so be prepared for the 2019 Annabelle Comes Home. Even though the teenagers are infuriating, McKenna Grace as Judy Warren was so amazing. Build up to increasing horror is definitely satisfying. Very nice to see female leads who are different and competent, but the whole dumb crush thing could be removed. I actually really enjoyed watching this movie. I thought it was a really, really fun watch. And it's hard to do likable child characters, even though, like, I know that these are like, I guess they're teenagers more, but like, when you're an adult, teenagers feel like children. Anyways, the point is, I would highly recommend that one for like watch parties if you just want to watch something really fun and stupid and like again, lots of escalating horror with like a couple good scares. Next up, 2020's The Turning. Great atmosphere, and the first half was quite spooky, but like many horror movies, it suffers in quality once they show the monster. Finn Wolfhard is very good at playing a hateful little shit. Both main female leads were excellent too. I believe this one is a modernization of The Turning of the Screw or A Turn of the Screw. It's an old English, like, spooky story. There's a play, I think, also, or was it always a play? I don't know. Moving on. 2022's Choose or Die. Much better than most movies in this genre, although it's also more gory. Unfortunately, the ending was a bust, and the final line was super lame. The premise is fantastic, and the acting is all around good. It may not be particularly groundbreaking, but it's a fun watch. I remember this one actually quite well. 2016's The Windmill. A very what the fuck slasher that does not waste any time. It's a tight, no filler movie. Some pretty creative kills, extremely gory, not for everyone. The villain is a bit unclear in terms of motivation and mechanics, but at least the actors were all pretty good. Seriously, this movie is crazy. If you really like slasher that's just like crazy, like weird creative kills, like sort of like the later Saw movie level of like bizarre kill traps or like deaths, The Windmill is one I would recommend. But like it's also very stupid, just so you know. House LLC 2016 would have been a stronger, scarier movie if all the documentary framing device stuff was taken out. The aggression between the male characters is kind of baseless and frequently feels forced. Lots of jump scares, but they've actually lots of jump scares, but they're actually earned and bone chilling. Yeah, the jump scares in this movie are quite good, if I say so myself. Coherence 2013. A great mindfuck movie that leaves a lot of questions open, but not in an unsatisfying way. Has a few genuinely creepy moments and a few jump scares, but mostly it's a philosophical character study. Extremely good acting, but the female characters are worse. Oh, I think I just meant I literally ran out of space. You can see I like wrote off the page here. I think I just meant that they're like worse developed. Male characters in that movie were very, very strong, and I think they just didn't spend enough time characterizing the women. Maybe they did, and those parts just hit the cutting room floor because, like I said, not always up to the director what parts get cut from the movie, so I can forgive them for that. Holy cow, that was 50 micro movie reviews. That feels like a lot. And if you're still watching, I'm so, so happy to have you. And thank you so much for watching. It really just means the world to me. Of course, there is going to be a part two because if this was all one video, then I don't think many of you would watch it. Do. I have to consider that you guys have lives, right? So please stay tuned for part two of my 100 movie reviews that I did back in 2022. And I really would love to hear your opinions of any of these movies. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. I would really, 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 really love to hear from you. It honestly means so much when I get comments, even like the littlest things. It makes me feel like I'm connecting with you guys, and that's really why I'm here is like to build some connections over the stuff that we can mutually share and enjoy, right? So if you have any strong opinions about the movies or about what I said about the movies, then let me know. Otherwise, stay happy and stay healthy because you are precious.